Hello everyone, my name is Zach Richardson, and this is In Retrospect. Just to let you guys know, this is the second episode in case you hadn't listened to the first one, but assuming that you found this small little YouTube channel, I'm assuming that you saw the first one, but in case you didn't, there is a first episode that I have labeled talking about the NBA Finals and Eddie Van Halen. That was last week's episode. This is the second episode. That was just a plug for the first episode. So the order of events for today's show: we're going to talk about the NBA Finals and their conclusion, the fact that I'm watching Game of Thrones for the first time, the song of the week, the video game of the week, and the challenge of the week. And so, moving to our first topic, we're going to be talking about the 2020 NBA Finals and their conclusion, and what an interesting series that it has been. It has been an interesting end to an even more interesting, I keep saying interesting, because it was peculiar, it was unique, it was everything that you could think of for being not the typical progression of events for the NBA playoffs and just postseason sports being played at all. Anyways, it was a very interesting, like I said earlier, progression of events that ended up having a champion crowned. And it was this year, it was the Los Angeles Lakers winning 4-2 in a best-of-7 series. LeBron James got his 4th championship ring. This now has put LeBron James even higher on the Mount Rushmore, if he can go any higher for some people, or it gets him that much closer to Michael Jordan, or perhaps even better than Michael Jordan. But all that matters to me in this specific discussion, without getting into the GOAT talk, the greatest of all time, is that LeBron has won a championship ring on 3 different teams. Now, you've heard of this happening before with other athletes. This happened for Danny Green this year as well, a shooting guard for the Los Angeles Lakers. But typically, you don't see the preeminent superstar of their generation playing on different teams, or at least winning championships on different teams. And not only has he done it with 3 different teams, but he has won Finals MVP every time he's won the Finals. And as anyone who follows basketball, at least over the last 5 to 10 years like myself, you hear ESPN talking about it, you hear TNT talking about it, you just hear all the NBA analysts talking about how many times LeBron James has been to the finals, and for a few years there he was going every year. And so the fact that he has won Finals MVP and all of the times that he has won the championship, that is just a testament to his greatness and his ability to play the game of basketball. And my friends know me. I complain about LeBron, even though I have a LeBron jersey. I have his last jersey that he had with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it was actually the last year Adidas was making NBA jerseys, so that's pretty cool. It's a little collectible item. But anyway, I'm a fan of his, and I'm a fan of his greatness. It's just for some reason, I think it's in my nature to want to push back against the trend. And I'm trying to fight that because I'm trying to enjoy his greatness and just how good he is at basketball. And I'm not salty because he left Cleveland. It makes perfect sense. It's just for whatever reason. I bet if I was born in the 1980s, I would have not been rooting for Magic Johnson or Larry Bird, or I would have picked one of them and disliked the other. Like, I've heard people talking about LeBron James, how he's the greatest, or either for a while there it was either LeBron or Kevin Durant, or even for a small second there Kawhi Leonard, and people just pick their favorite player and they happen to be the best player in the game, or at least one of the best, and you can make a case for lots of different guys that they're the best in today's NBA. But for some reason I love LeBron James, and I love his game, and I love what he's done for basketball, and I love what he's done off the court. But for some reason, I just have that pushback in my own head thinking, I just can't get on the boat. And I think what's going to end up happening is after he retires, if he ever does, at the rate he's playing so well at his age, by the way. But anyway, whenever he does retire and he'll be out of the game and we'll have the new stars. The stars have already emerged. I was always wondering, in high school and early college, who will be the next stars and when will they emerge? And they already have. It's just LeBron is still the king. And he's not just the king because it's his nickname. He's still the leader of the NBA. He still won the title. Yeah, he didn't win last year, and a lot of people want to say it took Anthony Davis for him to get there. Whether or not that's true, they still had to gel and come together. And I was skeptical, honestly. I didn't think that they were going to win the NBA championship. I thought it was going to be an experience for them like it was when LeBron was brand new to Miami when he was playing, and he was playing with Dwayne Wade for the first time, and he'd already been in Los Angeles for a year, but this was his first time playing with Anthony Davis on anything that wasn't an Olympic team or an all-star team. And so it was interesting to see their chemistry just show, and LeBron just being a good teammate and being an excellent basketball player as always. And so just shout out to him and his greatness and how good he is at basketball. And as a fan, whether he played for Cleveland or he didn't play for your team, like in this instance, he played for my team, you just have to respect it. He delivers on his promises. He makes it to the finals a lot. And I'm one of those people that criticizes him, even though he does what he's supposed to do. Yeah, he doesn't win every series in the finals, but he does what he's supposed to do. And that is ultimately better than just not going as often. And I have to just get over myself, but that's another discussion for another day. And so with this Lakers winning and LeBron, just for a side note, it's really hard to talk about basketball without mentioning LeBron James, and I know the sports networks are really bad about that. And what I mean by really bad, yes, he is the preeminent star. He will have the most attention. He will get talked about the most, but sometimes that's not always warranted, but at the same time it is. And so moving forward from that, Anthony Davis is a complete monster. I've always liked his game. I liked when he played at Kentucky. That's when I was still following college hoops pretty hard. I don't really follow college basketball as hard as I used to, but at that time, when I was in high school, in 2011, 2012, 2013, around that time, Anthony Davis was the freshman phenom for the Kentucky Wildcats, and he led them to a national championship. And I just remember watching him play and really liking his game. He has a really good awareness of picking and rolling and getting to the rim, but also finishing at the rim. It's huge for him and his game, not just dunking all the time, but it's his movements, it's his footwork, it's his fakes, it's his strength, especially now that he's dominating the way that he is. I have discussions with friends. I've had discussions with friends since Sunday, since today's Tuesday. And one friend in particular comes to mind just telling me about how he felt that Anthony Davis should have won the Finals MVP just for his defensive contributions and just his rebounding. But that's not up to us to decide, and he has a valid argument for doing so. Anthony Davis played huge for them late in the game. He just destroyed Miami on the rebounding, and the Brow is back. And the Brow never left, but because the Brow is a champ now, he's going to generate a lot more discussion. He's playing it for the Lakers, which obviously got him more talked about anyway since it's such a large market. But now people are really going to recognize his greatness because he got a ring. Me included. I'm really bad about looking to rings for validation. I don't appreciate guys that haven't won championships enough. Enough with the self-criticism. I'll stick to my points, and I'll be happy with that. But anyway, moving forward from the Lakers as if they're not getting talked about enough, and I'm falling into that as well. But I am going to definitely shine so much light on this year's Miami Heat team. They competed. They came out and played their hearts out. They weren't necessarily executing in the finals as well as they were in the other series of the playoffs, but they still, they weren't playing nearly as efficient and nearly as well, in my opinion, as they were throughout the playoffs, and that's because the Lakers threw them off their game. But it's just hard to execute in those tense situations. It's hard to go possession and possession and possession and just break a three, miss a shot, give up an offensive rebound to the Lakers. Just those little things add up, and they killed the spirit of the team in little ways, and they destroyed the momentum. It felt like every time Miami was about to pull away or they were about to go on a run of their own, they would either shoot themselves in the foot figuratively by just not shooting accurately, or they would just miss an easy defensive rebound, and they were not rebounding. They're a little undersized, and so you expect that, but it felt like there were lots of instances where if they had just boxed out and played a little bit more fundamentally sound as far as rebounding positioning is concerned, they could have really helped themselves out. I still don't think they could have beat the Lakers as much as I wanted it to happen, just because I love rooting for the underdog. This Miami Heat team was definitely overmatched, but they have a very high ceiling of potential. They have not even touched what they can become. Jimmy Butler is here. He is a force. He has been a star in this league for a few years, but not at this level, this consistently. Yes, he's been clutch. He's proven time and time again, that he is an excellent basketball player, but in this particular series, just the stats. He has not really had stat lines like this before, and even looking at his regular season numbers earlier, he wasn't even averaging 20 points per game for the entire season. But in this final series, he was averaging mid-20s, almost 30 per game. And it's only 6 games in comparison, to the 50, 60 games that they'd played. But it's still, to see that step forward in the playoffs. You've seen so many guys. The first guy that comes to mind, James Harden, not to get away from the Miami Heat, but just this is how I think of it. With James Harden, he's one of those guys that plays excellent in the regular season. He's an amazing basketball player. He does good things. He does his thing. and he does it very well. But in the playoffs, the style of defense changes, and the isolation style of play makes Houston struggle at times. And, like anyone, Harden can go cold. Not every shooter, stays hot forever, unless you're just, Anthony Davis and you shoot amazing from the field and your field goal percentage is awesome. But anyway, you see that in playoff basketball, you see a trend of players that were excellent in the regular season. Either they really rise above what they were in the regular season, like a Tyler Hero, who was already pretty good, but then he really rose above and played really well in the playoffs and in the finals. Or you see people a little deflated, like a James Harden, who struggles in these playoff rounds of basketball. He still averages amazing numbers. It's just his percentages do dip a little bit. And there's the eye test. From just strictly the eye test, you can tell there's something different. But with Jimmy Butler, he went so far above and beyond what I personally expected he was capable of. I know he's capable as a basketball player, and I'm not criticizing him at all. It's just he really, really was a force for his team. He led his team outright in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks for the entire series. That's right. The major statistical categories, he led the Miami Heat in all of those. And he's the first person to do it since LeBron did in 2016 with the Cavs. And so that's just amazing to be in that conversation as far as amazing finals performances in the history of the NBA Finals. Just the fact that he is that good and he did that well, the Miami Heat have nothing to be disappointed in with themselves. Yes, they struggled to execute a little bit, but that's what happens in the playoffs, especially in these tight games. You start missing shots. It's a game that comes to mind, speaking of 2016, is just the Cleveland Cavs team that played against the Warriors and came back from the 3-1 deficit. I remember that Game 7 specifically, just seeing how many shots were off that were just so makeable in other games and so makeable in other situations. But because the moment was so big and because the fatigue and just all kinds of different variables are factored in, the shot making is a lot tougher. Yeah, the percentages might be just a slight dip, but just from the eye test, you just see brick after brick after brick, or close miss after being wide open on a shot attempt. You just see things that you wouldn't see if the situation was less tense, if the situation was perhaps the regular season. It's just really, things change in the playoffs, and Miami just did so well, and I'm just so happy for them, and I'm happy for their fan base. One of the first teams I really spent time watching the NBA was the Miami Heat team with LeBron James. And I didn't even watch the Cavs when LeBron was there the first time. But then when he left to go to Miami, for some reason, just the attention that they brought to themselves, the fact that I was playing NBA 2K, shout out to that at those times, NBA 2K11 specifically with the Jordan challenges and all that good stuff. I really have a fondness for those franchises that are newer, that don't have as rich of a history, and that they're paving their own way. Whenever I play the NBA 2K series on my career, I try to go to the teams that never won the championship. They've never even been to the finals in some instances, like the Clippers, and just things like that. And I like playing for those teams just to see if I can do it fictionally for myself. But I can't help but carry that over into the reality of what the actual pros are doing in the actual NBA, of just rooting for the underdog and rooting for those smaller franchises. You can't help it. And Miami did great. And so they deserve all the credit in the world, and the Lakers deserve even more credit just for carrying out what they were supposed to do. They were the favorite. They did it. They pulled it off. Miami, they really just performed. It's hard to even speak because just how shocking it is for how good they were. And a lot of people, some of the guys I listen to Jalen Jacoby a lot. Shout out to those guys. Jacoby on Jalen and Jacoby really was super, super confident about this Heat team. And I hadn't really heard about that, and they obviously know more than me, and clearly that panned out, especially in Jacoby's instance with those predictions. But congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers for sure, and also, even though they didn't win, congratulations to the Miami Heat for being contenders, yet again, with a completely different complexion of their franchise than what they had when LeBron was there with Dwayne Wade. And so don't be shocked to find these two teams facing off in the finals again, perhaps a budding rivalry. Jimmy Butler going at it with LeBron James. Jimmy Butler, he could use a little help. I mean, they have a really rounded team, like a good shooting team. But the fact that, I'm not dissing Kendrick Nunn, he played well. But the fact that Kendrick Nunn has to be one of their big scorers off the bench, that's just tough. If they could have one more good role player, or even one more at least semi-star or good role player coming in, a good starter player coming in, that could move one of their decent guys from the starting lineup to the bench and just help the bench unit score. And so that was excellent. That was a good series. I did go on a little bit longer about that than I'd expected, but that just shows that it was really good. And I'm not even as hardcore of a basketball fan as most of my friends and most other people, but it was very fun to watch. Definitely can't wait for next year. It's going to be a good time. And moving on from that, Game of Thrones. I'm finally watching it. I know it's dated. Not really that dated. It's just, especially if you can watch it and it's however many years old, and it's still great. And it's just one of those timeless shows, and I've heard great things about it, and I've heard bad things about it. But so far I'm watching it. This is a spoiler alert in case you decide to ever watch it. I know it's an old show, but you might be like me and you might decide that you want to watch the show years after it was really relevant. And I'm doing that now, and I'm not disappointed. And so this is a spoiler alert. So I'm on season 2, episode 7 or 8, and I am just really, I've heard that everyone dies in this show, but I'm just shocked with the character deaths, and it's not really what you expect. Even though it feels like when you're watching the progression of season 2 for me, is that things are changing. It just doesn't feel like they're rapidly changing in the sense of anything outside of character deaths or character movement. And I guess that's really just the show. It's the politics, it's the games that are played, it's just the competing for the Iron Throne. All of those kinds of things. It's crazy to see that the writers, at least in these earlier seasons, I've heard bad things about the last season now. The structure and the flow didn't feel the same as it did when it was in its prime, but I've heard season 2 isn't quite the prime, so I'm getting there, but it's very good. Characters are just dying. I'm a huge fan of the different houses and the different dynamics with each house, how they're very predictable, but at the same time there's room for growth and development. Like I think of the Starks. They're incredibly naive, and it's annoying, but they're noble and true. And it's really hard to disrespect that, but at the same time, you see time and time again, even with Jon Snow running around, at the wall and going north of the wall, doing his thing as a man of the Night's Watch, I just saw the episode where he's off by himself as a ranger, and he was with a redheaded lady who was a wildling, I think that's the term. And he had every opportunity to kill her, and he was told to kill her, and he couldn't bring himself to do it because of his Stark, archetype that he fits into. Even though he is the bastard offspring of the late king who has died at this point in the show, Eddard Stark, I'm going to try and get these names. It'll be funny if you're listening and thinking, wow, he's watched it and he's almost on season 3 and he's still bad at the names. There's just a lot of names. Plus, when you binge watch, you don't retain things as well as you would have if you watched it once a week when it came out. But anyway, it's amazing how naive he can be. And there's the other Stark family members that just show that mercy, and they have a great sense of mercy. But the morals in their fictional world are so different. And it was also an era-based thing, but it was also just their fictional society thing as well. And the Starks, even with their nobility and mercy, it really has bit them in the back more times than one already, and it's really early in the show. But I love it. I don't know which house I would identify as yet. I would like to think I could be a Stark, but at the same time, I don't know. I can be pretty selfish. Definitely watch this show, by the way, if you haven't already, and I'm talking about it. And there's so much more to it than what I'm talking about, but I'm keeping it brief. I did love season 1. Started a little slow, then it picked up a lot. Season 2, the pacing is still stretched out quite a bit, but I know it's going to climax, and it's going to start climbing really soon for that. And I just got to give shout out to Tyrion Lannister, just an awesome character. He's not the perfect character, he's not the worst character, but he's just real. And he has flaws, but he's just been one of the highlights of the show for me, really. The highlight. Every time he's on screen, I enjoy it. At first, I was annoyed with him, and I think that's how they wanted me to feel, the writers did, when they made him, or at least when they brought him to the screen. But now he's just one of the redeeming facets of the Lannister house, because the Lannisters are crazy at this point. But you're starting to learn at this point in the show a little bit of why and how it comes to be that way. I'm definitely excited to see what happens next. If you want to comment in the comment section below, talk about, some things that you like only from seasons 1 and the first part of season 2, just talking about the Targaryen girl, the mother of dragons, whatever you want to talk about. Don't spoil anything for me, even though I've probably already know some of them unknowingly. And moving on from there, the song of the week. This week's song of the week is the Game of Thrones theme song, and it is on a YouTube video specifically. It is titled The Game of Thrones Theme Song Custom Shop, Fender. And this is on Fender's YouTube channel, and it is a collaboration on their YouTube page. According to their information in the information section of the video, it is a collaboration between the Game of Thrones creator Dan Weiss, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. These are all guitarists, by the way. These names that I'm mentioning, they play guitar. Tom Morello, if that sounds familiar to you and you can't quite think of it, and Rage Against the Machine sounds familiar but you can't quite think of it, he was a big character in the Guitar Hero 3 at the beginning of the game when you're playing the earlier songs and you get into a guitar battle, and it was a lot of fun, all that stuff. Shout out to Guitar Hero. Awesome game. Really helped expand my taste in music, by the way. Just a plug for them. Anyway, they have Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, legendary guitarist. They have a legendary guitarist, Scott Ian, from the metal band Anthrax. They have Nuno Betancourt of Extreme. They have the country singer and guitar player Brad Paisley, who, by the way, does a fantastic job in the song. You've got to listen to it. Then they have the Game of Thrones composer Raymond Jaudi. I think that's how I'm going to pronounce it. But it's about a 7-minute YouTube video. Just sit and watch that. At the very least, listen to it. It's worth listening to. There's about a 2-minute introduction where they're just talking, and it's a live session, and they're just kind of having fun with it, and it feels really nice. It feels like you're sitting in a guitar shop just watching some friends chop it up or making new friendships. It's really neat. Definitely listen to the Game of Thrones theme song. The guitar, it's not a cover, but the rendition, really. Check that out. Then this week's video game of the week, I play a lot of video games. This is the first time I'm really talking about video games. Definitely look forward to that in the future. With me talking about video games, it's a big hobby of mine, and it's a hobby of all my friends. And if I'm not playing the game, I'm typically talking about it. Like I was there for the Red Dead Redemption 2, excuse me. My friends are going to kill me for saying that. But anyway, I said it wrong. Whatever. The Red Dead Redemption series, I've heard about those. I haven't really played them, but I've sat and watched, I'm into Final Fantasy myself, personally. I'm into Rocket League. I'm into quite a few different kinds of games. I like retro video games. I play emulators. It's definitely a fun time. Any legal people listening to this, I doubt there would be, but if there are, I do have hard copies of the game, so relax, it's fine. Anyway, the video game of this week, so that's going to be another of the week thing for me that I'm going to have regularly in these episodes, is Sid Meier's Civilization 6, The Gathering Storm Expansion Edition. So with Sid Meier's Civ 6, as the name implies, it's the 6th installment of the series. It's a strategy game series that has been out on computers, and it's actually went to other platforms with the last release, and it's getting to be quite popular. It's been popular for years among PC gamers, but other people are exposed to it now in a different way than they have before. And so I played Civ 6. That was the first one I played. I just say Civ, you don't say Civilization, Sid Meier's Civilization, but that's the official name of it. And so I played Civ 6 quite a bit for the last 2 years. It was the base game, but the one I've been playing, the game of the week, is the Gathering Storm Expansion Edition, so I'll get to that. So, not to get into too many details, but just to let you know, if you're interested in at least looking it up or knowing what it's like to get a feel for the type of video games I like to play, here's just a little explanation. It's a big game, it's a deep game, there's a lot to it, but I'm just going to talk about the base set and then just some changes that have been put into the Gathering Storm Expansion Edition. So it is a strategy game. You can play by yourself with computer bots, or you can play online with your friends and computer bots, or you can just do all human players. There's all kinds of neat things. You play on a board. It looks like it's a map, and on this map, you take a leader of a civilization, say Montezuma of the ancient Aztecs. He's one of the characters in the game. You pick him as your leader, and different leaders have different abilities that they can provide to all their civilization. And what you end up doing is you start with one city and span out from there. You can settle new cities. You can build up the cities you have. You can go to war. You can harvest resources. You can build natural wonders like the Stonehenge. You can have rock bands play. You could have beach tourist attractions. You set up your civilization, whether it's culture or military or science, or religion. There's different ways you can win the game, but the whole point of this is to become the preeminent civilization, to be the ideal civ, or at least that's the thinking behind it. But when you play it, it's about generating the points in certain different kinds of victories to end up winning the game, and that's the whole point. But it does take a long time to play. There's a lot to it, and I'm keeping it very basic. But the Gathering Storm edition that I've been playing, I've only played it just a handful of times. I'm starting to get into it more. It has natural disasters in it. You have neat mechanics that are new with it. They change different things like what technology you can explore and discover at what times differently than the base game. There's different culture discoveries with government and things like that. There's neat stuff with it. I got Civ 6 from the Steam store myself. You could also get it on the Epic Game Store. I would highly recommend it if you're into strategy games, but what I would say is that there's a very steep learning curve with it, and it takes a lot of time, and you commit a lot of time to playing it. But it is a fairly slow-paced game that you can save whenever you want, and it's a board game style strategy game. It's definitely worth your time to learn. I've played it with my friends. I've played it by myself. You will spend a few hours playing it, and depending on your patience, that could be a 2-hour game session to a 10-hour game session. That's just up to you. It's excellent. Excellent. I couldn't love it enough. It's one of my favorite games that I've ever played. And, you can't mention Civ without mentioning Civ 5 for all you Civ 5ers out there. Yeah, I did that. Yes, I did. All I ever tell people is like, what games do you play? If they ask me. And I say, I play Civ 6. They're like, Civ 6? That's terrible. Why would you do that? Play Civ 5. So, there's a lot of people out there like that. I appreciate you guys for your feedback, but I do love Civ 6, and so life goes on. But I had to give that little plug. The people in the community know what I'm trying to say, and I'm throwing a subtle diss. It's just kind of funny. But if you're going to get into this game, you're going to want to set your settings to low turns, and turn your game speed up to higher speeds, such as the online instead of the normal pace, so things can get built quicker. The pacing of the game changes. It's not quite the same, but you can play the game for 6 hours and really progress somewhere, versus if you have it on normal speed, you can play it for 6 hours, but you wouldn't progress as far because the game is stretched out versus being compressed. But if you want to play it with me, if you ever decide to get it, or if you're listening to this and you already have it, just give it a shout. Just give it a shout out. Give it a little play. Give it some love. It's a great game. I love that game. Shout out to my friend Matt for getting this game and playing it with me and really encouraging me to play Gathering Storm. I had played base set for a long time, and I tried Gathering Storm just once or twice, but I didn't have the patience for it. But he's really encouraging me to keep playing it, and he's just playing it with me. It's always more fun to play with your friends. Shout out to the PC Master Race for just being incredible. I love it. I don't have the greatest PC. I don't have the worst, but I have a PC, and I play on it. I could have a console, but I have a PC. It all works out in the end. Just wanted to say Master Race, a little elitist there. But it's because I'm proud. It's not that I'm necessarily condemning consoles. It's all down to preference. But yeah, that is the video game of the week for sure. And we're about to end out the show with the challenge of the week. And so the challenge of the week for you all, myself included, the challenge is eating something spicy. Now, this is relative depending on who you are and what you like to eat. If it's spicy for you, try it one time. Or if you never really do spicy at all, do something slightly mild. Just give yourself a chance to see the experience. Don't go too spicy. I've done that before. If you go too spicy and it hurts, there's a level of flavor that comes with spice, something where it burns your mouth a little bit, but it has a good saltiness to it. It's a great flavor. It helps your senses in the sense of it clears out your nose, and sometimes that sinus stuff coming out isn't necessarily the nicest or doesn't feel the most pleasant. But for some people that don't necessarily breathe very clearly through their nose, if you want a nice cleanse, eat something even just a little bit spicy, and it's great. It helps your metabolism. It's low calorie. Sometimes it can be high in salt, but you can find some mid-range to low salt spicy alternatives that can give you the flavor without the really high amounts of sodium. So definitely try that for the week. And just to follow up on last week's challenge, I actually did go out for 15 minutes. That was exciting. I hope you all did that as well. I wasn't expecting to, but I did go out. Had a hot date. It was awesome. And I was out walking around at the mall. And it was just nice to be outside. The weather has been going back and forth between, it feels a little bit like summer, but it also feels like fall. that we're just in that transition here in Southern Ohio where the weather really can't make up its mind. I know it can't make up its mind everywhere, but specifically in Ohio, maybe it's not unique to us at all, but we always say it. The weather could go from snowing at 30 degrees Fahrenheit to 90 degrees in 3 days, or even 1 day sometimes. But, maybe that happens everywhere. But just looking at it from my perspective and thinking about myself, just putting the magnifying glass on Southern Ohio, and what we typically think is that the weather is ridiculous. But it's still pretty nice. The challenge of this week is to eat something spicy. If you didn't go outside for 15 minutes, just at least one time, without really anything to do other than walk maybe, then you could still do that. There's no pressure. It's just a nice thing to do. It's really for me. I know it's for you guys too, but I challenge myself to do it. It's good for mental health. It's good for physical health. Just even go outside just for 15 minutes. So just another plug for that, but the challenge of this week, definitely eat something even just a little bit spicy. You won't regret it. All right, so today is Tuesday. Like last week, I will try to have another episode on YouTube on my channel next Tuesday. This is Z, signing off.